I've always prided myself on being a good husband, loyal, committed, attentive. My wife and I had been together for years, and I always thought I knew her better than anyone. We shared everything, our dreams, our plans, our future. But recently, I've begun to feel like there's a quiet, nagging discomfort between us. Something subtle, something that hasn't quite reached the surface, but it's there, lingering like a shadow in the corner of a room. It started with the small things. Late nights at work, extra hours that I never used to question. She'd come home late, too tired to even talk, just slipping into bed beside me without saying a word. The affection, once abundant, began to wane. I told myself it was just the pressures of life, stress at work, the pandemic, whatever excuses I could make. But deep down, I knew something was different. One night, I was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, when I heard the faint buzz of her phone. Normally, she'd check it right away, but this time, she let it go. That seemed odd to me. I'm not the kind of guy who's suspicious by nature. I've always trusted her. But when she turned her back to me in the bed, clutching her phone tight, I couldn't ignore the feeling anymore. Was I paranoid, or was there something more going on? I couldn't shake the thought. She was acting distant, secretive, something was off. It wasn't until I started noticing the little signs that I couldn't ignore anymore. The strange glances when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she would quickly close her phone or hide it when I entered the room. And then, there was the man, the one who started appearing more often in the photos she'd post online. I'd never seen him before, but there he was, arm draped around her shoulder in every photo. It was unsettling, but I told myself it was nothing. After all, I trust her, right? But I couldn't stop wondering, who was this guy? And why did it bother me so much? This was just the beginning, though. That was when I decided I needed answers. But what I didn't realize was how far I was willing to go for the truth. What started as a suspicion would soon spiral into something I never imagined. And that's when the real questions began. The days that followed felt like I was living in a fog. Every time I looked at her, I felt a knot in my stomach. It wasn't that she'd done anything obvious. No glaring signs of infidelity, no secretive late-night phone calls. But the little things were piling up, the things that make you wonder. Am I overthinking this? Or am I missing something big? I couldn't ignore it anymore. The constant buzz of her phone, the way she'd smile when she looked at it, the fact that she had started keeping it face down at all times. I wasn't a jealous person by nature, but something in me couldn't let go of the feeling that something was wrong. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination. Maybe she was stressed, maybe it was work, maybe I was just being paranoid. But then, one evening, I got a text from an unknown number. The message was brief and simple. How's she doing? I was frozen. My mind raced. Who was this person? Was this the guy? Was this some sort of sign I had been missing all along? I couldn't let it go. I had to know. I had to find out. So I started to dig. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but I knew that if I didn't figure it out, I'd drive myself mad with uncertainty. I began to search her social media more closely, something I had never really done before. There, I found it. Pictures. Lots of pictures. Some I'd seen before, some I hadn't. And in every one of them, there he was, this man I didn't recognize, always just a little too close to her. My heart sank as I looked at the pictures, but it was the comments beneath them that made my blood run cold. Another amazing night with you, one of them read. Can't wait for next time, said another. That was it. The confirmation I was dreading, yet desperately hoping I wouldn't find. There was something going on between her and this man. I didn't know who he was, but I knew he was in the picture. And I had no idea how long it had been happening. I couldn't confront her, not yet. Not when I didn't have all the answers. I needed more. So, I started watching her more closely, paying attention to every little detail. I memorized the patterns in her behavior, and then, I caught it. One night, after she'd come home later than usual, I overheard a part of her conversation on the phone. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I miss you, she said, her voice soft, almost tender. I'll see you tomorrow. I didn't have to hear more. I knew who she was talking to. I could feel my world crashing down. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I had to get all the facts. I had to know how deep this went. So, I decided to take the next step. By the time I decided to confront her, I was already in too deep. The pictures, the secretive phone calls, the late nights, everything pointed to one painful truth. My wife was cheating on me. I wasn't sure how to feel. Part of me wanted to scream, confront her, but another part of me was paralyzed, too stunned to act. But I knew one thing. I couldn't just sit back. I needed to know who he was, how long it had been going on, and why she had done this to me. So, I started watching her more closely, making notes of where she went and who she was with. It became a pattern. She'd leave, sometimes return late at night, and it always felt off. The more I observed, the more I realized that I couldn't let it slide. One day, I decided to follow her. I told myself I was just being cautious, better to be sure than to live with doubt. She drove down a road I didn't recognize, one that didn't lead to her office like usual. I followed her from a distance, my heart pounding as I watched her pull into a quiet neighborhood. She parked in front of a house I didn't know, and my stomach dropped. Who lived here? Why was she here? I waited, watching her walk up the driveway, then went inside. I couldn't sit in my car anymore. I had to know more. So I followed her into the neighborhood, keeping a safe distance. After what felt like an eternity, she came out again, this time with a man. The man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and when he kissed her on the cheek goodbye, it wasn't just a friendly kiss. It was intimate. They shared a moment, one I wasn't part of. The anger in me surged, but I stayed in the shadows, watching them say goodbye. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I went home that night, my mind racing. I dug through her phone records, searching for a name, a connection, anything. Then I found it, a number I didn't recognize. I Googled it. The results were immediate. His name wasn't just some random man. He was our postman. The man delivering our mail was the one she'd fallen for. I sat there, stunned, sick to my stomach. The man who dropped off our letters had taken away the love I thought was mine. I had the proof, but now the question was, what was I going to do with it? The discovery hit me harder than I expected. A stranger, the postman, of all people, was the one who had my wife's heart. The man who delivered our mail had crossed a line I never imagined. But there I was, standing at the edge of my own marriage, staring into the abyss. I knew I had to act. But what was I supposed to do now? Confront her? Wait for more proof? The thought of confronting her made my stomach twist with anxiety. If I were wrong, I'd destroy everything. But if I didn't confront her, I'd never have the closure I needed. That night, I stayed up late, pacing the house, my mind racing with a million different scenarios. Should I confront her with what I knew? Or should I just keep gathering information and wait for the perfect moment? I decided to wait. I needed more answers, more details. I wasn't just going to storm in and accuse her without knowing everything. So, I started to keep track of her phone records even more closely. I started marking the times she'd leave the house, how long she'd be gone, and when she'd come back. The more I watched, the more I saw just how routine her lies had become. But then came the breaking point. One evening, I watched her leave the house again, dressed a little too nicely, her hair done just so. This wasn't just another trip to the office. This was different. I decided to follow her again. This time, she parked at a different house, one I didn't recognize. I parked down the street, trying to stay far enough back so she wouldn't see me. She went up to the door, and when it opened, there he was, the postman. I watched as they greeted each other with an affectionate hug before going inside together. I couldn't breathe. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. This was no longer a rumor in my head. It was reality. My wife was having an affair, and the man was someone I had trusted every day without knowing it. I had no more doubts now. But now that I had the truth, the real question was, what was I going to do with it? I had to decide, confront her and risk everything, or keep digging and let this festering wound grow deeper. The next few days felt like I was living in a fog, each minute dragging on as I wrestled with what to do. The truth was out there, unavoidable, undeniable, but I still couldn't shake the feeling of powerlessness. It felt like I was waiting for the right moment, waiting for some sign to tell me what to do next. But then, it hit me. I was never going to be ready. There was no perfect moment. I had to take control of the situation, and I had to do it now. The only thing that mattered was confronting her. I couldn't live in this limbo anymore. I spent the evening planning what I was going to say. I needed to be calm, collected, no yelling, no accusations. I had the facts, and that had to be enough. I didn't want to give her a chance to twist things, to lie her way out of it. I had to be sharp, focused. I knew she would try to make me question myself, to turn the tables, but I couldn't let that happen. When she came home that night, the routine felt the same as it had before. She smiled at me, her usual practice smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. She kissed me on the cheek and went to change. I watched her, trying to keep my emotions in check, knowing that in a few minutes, everything would change. When she came back into the living room, I asked her to sit down. "What's going on, babe?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath and said it. "I know about him. I know about the postman." Her face went pale, but she didn't say anything immediately. Instead, she looked away, clearly searching for words, for something to hold on to. It wasn't the reaction I was expecting. No shock, no immediate defense. Just silence. "You've been seeing him, haven't you?" I pressed, feeling the weight of the question settle between us. Her lips trembled as she opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out at first. Finally, she said, I didn't mean for this to happen." I wasn't sure if that was an apology or an excuse, but it didn't matter. I already knew everything. "How long, Sarah?" I asked, barely able to choke out her name. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the floor. Then, in a whisper, she said, "A few months." That was it. The final nail in the coffin. All the doubts, all the little signs, came crashing down at once. "I deserve better than this," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away before she could touch me. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. "I don't know what to say," she said, the tears now welling up in her eyes. "I'm sorry, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore." The silence between us was deafening. She sat there, tears streaming down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her. Only a cold emptiness where love used to be. I had been betrayed, and now it was time to deal with the wreckage. "I don't know what you expect from me, Sarah," I said, my voice flat. "You've shattered everything. I can't just forget this." Her hand trembled as she reached out again, but I pulled back, feeling repulsed. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. Not after everything. She sniffled, trying to form words. "I never meant to hurt you," she said in a shaky voice. "I was lost and I just wanted to feel alive again." I shook my head in disbelief. "That's your excuse? You cheated on me because you wanted to feel alive?" She looked down at her lap, the guilt hanging in the air like a fog. "It's not just that. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. Things changed between us, and I was lonely." Her words stung, but I kept my composure. "You think that makes it okay? You think that justifies what you've done?" I could see it in her eyes, guilt, regret, and maybe even shame. But none of that mattered to me. The damage was done. "I don't know what to do now," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you like this. I'm so sorry." I let out a bitter laugh. "Sorry," I repeated. "That's it. You betray me. You destroy everything we built, and all I get is sorry?" Her voice cracked. "What do you want me to say?" I didn't know how to answer. What could she possibly say that would make this right? What words could undo the betrayal, the lies, the deceit? "I want the truth," I said, my voice steely. "I want to know how long this has been going on, everything. No more lies." She took a shaky breath, then nodded. "It started a few months ago, after things started getting bad between us." I nodded, processing her words. I wasn't surprised. I had suspected this for a while, but hearing her admit it felt like a punch to the gut. "And now?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Are you still seeing him?" She didn't answer immediately. The hesitation was all I needed. The truth was clear. She was still in it. I stood up, pacing the room, my mind a whirlwind of anger and betrayal. "I don't know what I expected from you, Sarah, but I sure as hell didn't expect this." She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "I never wanted to lose you." I met her gaze, my expression hardening. "Well, you did. You already have." I couldn't stand the sight of her tears anymore. It wasn't that I didn't feel anything. It was that I felt everything, all at once, and it was too much. The betrayal, the lies, the pain. It all rushed through me in waves. But I couldn't let her see how much it was affecting me. I couldn't let her win that way. "Why him, Sarah?" I asked, my voice quieter now, almost to the point of exhaustion. "Why the postman? Why not anyone else?" She looked away, her hands wringing in her lap as she fought to keep her composure. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking. It just happened." I laughed bitterly. "That's what you always say, isn't it? It just happened. Like that makes it okay." She flinched at the sharpness in my tone, but I couldn't stop myself. The more she spoke, the more I realized how deep this had gone. This wasn't just some random fling. This was an affair. A relationship, even. And I'd been the fool, living in the dark while she shared her heart with someone else. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said, stepping back. The words came out before I could stop them. I don't recognize the woman I married. How could you do this to me? She started to sob harder, her face contorting with guilt and regret. I never meant to hurt you like this. I swear I didn't. I love you. I do. But I wasn't happy. And I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Her words felt hollow. How could I believe them now? Everything she said felt like just another excuse, another attempt to smooth over the cracks she'd made in our relationship. I had heard those words too many times before, and yet, somehow, they still stung. I don't know what to do, she whispered, reaching out for me again. But this time, I didn't move. I didn't want her touch. I'll end it. I will. Please, don't leave me. But I couldn't. I couldn't stand here and pretend everything would be fine. The truth was too raw, too real, to ignore. It was clear she was still tangled up in the mess she'd created, still caught between him and me. I need time, Sarah, I said, the words coming out more coldly than I intended. I need time to figure out what comes next. And right now, I can't be around you. Not like this. I grabbed my keys, walking to the door, my heart heavy with the weight of the decision I'd just made. I couldn't stay here. Not with her. Not with all the lies hanging between us. She reached for me one last time, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I'll be back when I'm ready, I said without looking back, the door clicking shut behind me. The next few days were a blur. I stayed at a friend's place, not knowing exactly where to go, what to do. I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head, each word Sarah said echoing in my thoughts. Her pleas for forgiveness, her promises to end it, the way she reached for me like I was the one who had abandoned her. But none of it changed the fact that she had cheated. That trust, the very foundation of our relationship, was shattered beyond repair. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't respond to her texts. I just needed space. Time to breathe, time to think, time to escape the whirlwind of emotions that were spinning inside me. But the more time passed, the more I realized the truth. I didn't know who I was anymore. I'd spent so much of my life with her, building a future together, that I didn't know how to exist outside of that. I had no idea who I was without her. And that terrified me. The house was empty when I returned. She had packed some of her things and left a note. I'm sorry. I know I've hurt you more than I can ever fix. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. I crumpled the note in my hand and threw it in the trash. I didn't want apologies or promises. I wanted the truth, the raw, unfiltered truth. And it was clear now that the truth wasn't going to make this any easier. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what I wanted from this. Did I want her back? Part of me, the part that had loved her for so long, wanted to forgive her. But then there was the other part of me, the part that felt betrayed, that wanted to scream at the injustice of it all. I couldn't just turn off my feelings, no matter how hard I tried. She had been my wife, my partner, my confidant. But now she was the person who had destroyed everything. I started doing things for myself, things I hadn't done in years. I went for long walks, worked on a few projects around the house, tried to find a sense of normalcy. But there was no normal anymore. Not without her. When I did hear from her again, it was a text. I miss you. I don't want to lose you. Please let's talk. The words were a knife in my gut. She didn't want to lose me? How selfish could she be? She had already lost me the moment she made the choice to betray me. But I didn't respond. Not yet. I needed more time. Time to figure out who I was without her. Time to rebuild myself from the broken pieces she left behind. Days turned into weeks. The silence between Sarah and me stretched on, heavy and suffocating. I went through the motions. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, but nothing felt real anymore. I was merely surviving, not living. The weight of everything hung over me, and no distraction seemed to help. One night, I found myself sitting in the living room, staring at the empty space where Sarah used to sit. The anger, the betrayal, the hurt, they all surged within me, but so did something else. I missed her. I missed the woman I once knew, the woman I thought I loved. But then I reminded myself, she wasn't the same. The betrayal had changed everything. I couldn't go back to pretending, to ignoring what had happened. I picked up my phone, unsure of what I was hoping for. I almost called her, but I stopped myself. I needed to take control. So, I texted instead. We need to talk. In person. But not here. The next day, Sarah showed up at a coffee shop, looking smaller, fragile, like she had been carrying a weight of her own. She sat down across from me, and we sat in silence for what felt like forever. The tension between us was palpable. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you like this. I wish I could take it all back. I looked at her, the words coming hard. I know, but I don't know if I can forgive you. Tears welled up in her eyes as she said, I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to prove I can change. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. Could I ever trust her again? Could I love her like I once had? I wasn't sure, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I need time, I said, my voice steady, though uncertainty still gripped me. I can't make any promises right now. She nodded quietly. I'll wait. No pressure. I'll give you the space you need. I didn't have an answer, not yet. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was moving forward. I didn't know where this would lead, but I was starting to heal. For me, the days that followed were filled with a quiet kind of tension. I spent most of my time alone, processing everything. I needed space to think, space to breathe. The more I thought about Sarah, the more I realized how much I had neglected myself over the years. In the wake of her betrayal, I had forgotten what it was like to be me, to focus on what I wanted, what I needed. I started doing things I hadn't in a long time. Taking long walks, reading books I'd neglected, even picking up an old hobby I had put aside. Little by little, I started to remember who I was before her, before us. One evening, as I sat with a glass of whiskey in hand, I realized how much I had been living for someone else. I had given so much of myself to her, to the idea of our life together, that I had lost track of my own dreams and desires. Now, all I had was the bitter taste of betrayal, but it was also an opportunity, a chance to rebuild my life from the ground up. I didn't know what the future held with Sarah. I didn't know if I could forgive her, or if I even wanted to. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her choices define me. I wasn't going to stay stuck in this endless loop of pain and regret. I had to move forward, even if it meant leaving her behind. A few days later, I reached out to an old friend I hadn't seen in years. We met for coffee, and just talking with someone who knew me from before felt like a breath of fresh air. It reminded me of the person I used to be, the person who didn't let life's weight crush him. The more I connected with people outside of my old circle, the more I realized that my life wasn't over, that I still had the ability to change, to move in a new direction. When I saw Sarah again, it was a week later. She asked if we could talk. She was still the same woman I had married, but the betrayal had taken away her innocence. I had no idea what I was going to say, but I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I've been thinking, I began, my voice steady. I can't promise anything, but I can't keep living like this either. She nodded, her face full of guilt and hope. But as I looked at her, I realized something. I had to find my own way, regardless of her. The air between Sarah and me was thick with unspoken words when I agreed to meet her. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this half-life, caught between anger and sadness. I had spent so long in this purgatory of uncertainty, and I needed to make a choice. Either I was going to fight for our relationship, or I was going to let go. She arrived at the cafe early, her hands fidgeting with the sleeve of her jacket. She looked nervous, more fragile than I had seen her in a long time, like she was walking on broken glass. When she saw me, her face softened, and she stood up quickly, as if to greet me, but then froze, unsure of what to do. I sat across from her, keeping my distance. I had learned something in these last few weeks. There was no more rushing into decisions. No more pretending things could go back to how they were. Not after what happened. This conversation wasn't about fixing things. It was about moving forward. I've thought a lot about what you said. I began, my voice firm but not unkind. And I've thought about where I'm at. About what I need. She nodded, her eyes full of that familiar pleading. And what do you need? I need space. Not just from you, but from everything. I said, meeting her eyes. I need to be on my own for a while, to figure out who I am without you. Her face fell. I understand, she whispered. I've hurt you so much. I just want to make it right. I shook my head gently. I'm not sure it can be made right, Sarah. Not right now. You've broken my trust, and that's not something I can just fix. I don't know if I ever can. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice shaky. I don't want to lose you. I almost felt pity for her. I saw the woman I once loved, still clinging to the idea that everything could be salvaged with the right words, the right promises. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. The thought of living in that kind of uncertainty was suffocating. I don't know if I want to be with you anymore, I said quietly, the weight of my words sinking in. I can't just pretend like everything's fine. I need to live my life for me, and I can't do that if I'm stuck in this limbo. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't try to stop me this time. She understood. At least, I think she did. I think it's time we both figured out what comes next alone, I added. I stood up to leave, and she didn't stop me. She just sat there, the tears she was holding back finally falling. And as I walked away, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, relief. I didn't know what my future looked like, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was walking toward it, not running away from it. The first few days after I walked away from Sarah felt like I was wading through mud, each step slow and deliberate. The decision to let go was one of the hardest I'd ever made. It wasn't just about the betrayal, though that stung more than I ever could have anticipated. It was about realizing that I had been living a life that wasn't truly mine. I'd given so much of myself to her, to us, and somewhere along the way, I had lost who I was. But now, there was space to breathe, to think, to be alone. For the first time in years, I didn't have to answer to anyone. I didn't have to worry about what she needed, what we needed. I was free. I started by getting rid of things, items we'd accumulated over the years that reminded me of her, of us. Little things, pictures, mementos, gifts, went into boxes and out of sight. Each item I removed felt like shedding a layer of skin, like moving farther away from the person I used to be. It wasn't easy. I missed the comfort of routine. I missed the person I thought I could trust. But I also realized how much I had neglected myself. I started spending time with friends I hadn't seen in ages, rediscovered old hobbies, and even signed up for a fitness class, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I was building my own life again, brick by brick. And though it felt lonely at times, there was a quiet strength in it. One evening, I went to a bar with a friend from work. I wasn't looking for anything, but when I walked in, I was struck by how alive it felt. The energy, the laughter, the chatter of people who weren't weighed down by the baggage of betrayal or broken hearts. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was part of something bigger than my pain. I didn't want to start over with someone else just yet. But as I sat there, talking and laughing with people who didn't know my history, I realized something important. I could start over. I could rebuild my life without carrying the weight of my past. And that realization, simple as it was, felt like freedom. It wasn't the kind of instant happiness I thought I'd find after leaving Sarah. It was quieter, more profound. It was the peace of knowing that I was in control of my own story again. As the days went by, I found myself slowly adjusting to this new life, one where I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder or questioning my own worth. For the first time in a long time, I woke up and wasn't weighed down by the emotional baggage that had been dragging me through the past few years. There was still a hollow space where Sarah used to be, but it didn't consume me anymore. I started focusing on the things I'd forgotten I loved. I spent more time outdoors, hiking on trails I had neglected, feeling the crisp air fill my lungs. I even took up photography again, capturing moments I would have once overlooked, the way the sunlight danced on the water, the quiet beauty of a city street at dawn. These were things I hadn't experienced in years, and yet they were always right in front of me. One Saturday afternoon, I walked into a local bookstore just to browse. The smell of paper, the quiet hum of the air conditioning, the faint chatter of others lost in their own worlds. It was comforting. As I wandered through the aisles, I found myself drawn to the travel section. I hadn't thought about travel in a long time. My life had always been centered around plans I made with Sarah, but now, well, I was starting to think about my plans. I bought a guidebook to Iceland, something I'd always wanted to do but had put on the back burner. I didn't know when I'd go or how I'd afford it, but the thought of seeing something new, something entirely different, felt like a challenge I was ready for. That evening, I sat with the guidebook, a glass of wine in hand, and just let myself dream. I hadn't allowed myself to do that in so long. I thought about the adventures I could have, the places I could go alone, the things I could experience without anyone holding me back. It wasn't just about escaping my past. It was about embracing the future, carving out a path that was truly mine. As I reflected on everything that had happened, Sarah, the betrayal, the heartache, I realized how far I'd come. I had taken back my life, step by step, piece by piece. And while the hurt was still there, it no longer defined me. I was rediscovering the person I had once been, and in the process, I was becoming someone even stronger. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready. The weeks that followed were like a slow, steady climb. I was still figuring out who I was without Sarah, without the life we had built together. But with each day, I felt a little lighter, a little more like myself again. I was no longer living in the shadow of betrayal. I wasn't looking for validation from anyone else. I was simply trying to understand my own needs, my own desires, and what I wanted from this new chapter of my life. One night, I decided to go out with some old friends. It was a casual get-together at a local bar. It wasn't anything special, just a chance to reconnect and forget about everything for a little while. I'd been avoiding big crowds and loud places for months, but tonight I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't in a long time. No one knew my backstory here. They didn't know about Sarah or the heartbreak. They didn't need to. It felt good. Not just the distraction, but the connection. It reminded me of who I used to be before everything became complicated. Before I let myself get lost in someone else's life. I laughed. I made jokes. I was me again. And then, something unexpected happened. I walked in on her. She didn't even try to hide it. The man she'd been sleeping with, my postman, was sitting on our couch. My world shattered in that moment. My wife, the woman I trusted more than anything, betrayed me in the worst way possible. And the worst part? She still doesn't know I know. What happens next will leave you speechless. I met someone. Not in the way I had before. Not with the intention of replacing Sarah or filling any gaps in my heart. But with an easy, genuine connection. Her name was Emma. We chatted for hours, about everything and nothing. She was smart, kind, and, most importantly, she didn't expect anything from me. She had her own life, her own story. It was refreshing. We didn't talk about relationships or baggage, not at first. We simply enjoyed each other's company, shared a few laughs, and talked about our favorite books and places we wanted to visit. There was no pressure. There was no trying to make something work. It was just two people enjoying a moment, free of expectations. As I walked home later that night, I felt something shift. It wasn't love, at least not yet, but it was the first time in a long while I felt a spark of hope. Hope that I could open myself up again. Hope that I could share parts of myself with someone, without the fear of being hurt again. That night, I didn't feel like I was running away from my past. I felt like I was finally walking towards something new, something that was mine, something I could own. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't had in months. I wasn't sure where things with Emma would go. Maybe nowhere, maybe somewhere. But for the first time, it didn't matter. I was learning to trust myself again, to trust that the future didn't need to be defined by my past mistakes or anyone else's actions. I was taking the first steps forward, and I was ready for whatever came next. Time has a way of healing even the deepest wounds. It doesn't erase the scars, but it helps you learn to live with them. Looking back now, I see the journey I've taken, from the devastation of betrayal to this newfound peace. It feels like a lifetime ago. But the truth is, it was only a few months. A few months that have reshaped my life and my perspective. I don't think I'll ever fully forget what happened with Sarah. I don't think I can. The trust that was broken, the love that was shattered, will always be a part of me. But what I've learned is that it doesn't have to define me. It doesn't have to hold me back. I've found something far more valuable in this process, my own strength. I've started taking real risks again, whether it's picking up the phone to call an old friend, signing up for that photography class I've always wanted to take, or planning my trip to Iceland. For the first time in a long time, I'm living my life for me, and I'm not looking back. As for Emma, things have been easy and natural. We've spent time together, not rushing into anything, just enjoying each other's company. There's no pressure to make it work, no anxious wondering about what the future holds. I've learned that it's okay to take things slow, to let relationships unfold without forcing them. And it's been freeing. I'm not saying that I'll never have another heartbreak or that I'm immune to pain, but I do know that I'm stronger now. I know that no matter what happens, I can handle it. I can walk away from something that isn't right and walk towards something that is. And maybe that's the most important thing I've learned. I am enough. Not because of who I've been with, not because of anyone else's approval, but because I've learned to trust myself, to trust my own path. So here I am, standing at the edge of the future, knowing that I'm no longer defined by my past. I have scars, yes, but they don't control me. I'm moving forward, with a heart open to whatever comes next. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to see where the journey takes me.